Professor Gwythian Prins, what a honour it is to have you with me right here. Thank you very much for your time.
It's reciprocal, Chris. I know about the power of your program.
Maybe underestimated at times, I can assure you of that. Do you believe that the planet is warming?
Yes, of course the planet is warming. Sometimes it's warming, sometimes it's cooling. We're coming out of the Maunder Minimum, the last little ice age, and so there's gradual warming going on. There's no question about that. On reputable temperature records, which means not records which have been artificially inflated by the heat island effect, such as is happening outside us here in London, with the heat being reflected off the concrete. So, a combination of Huntsville satellite records, yes, of course. We're in a warming recovery phase, but remember, the sun takes a holiday, and it's going to be due for another Maunder Minimum type rest, probably after I pop my clogs in the 2040s, and then we'll go into another cold phase.
So I establish from that sentence and that answer that you firmly believe in the cycles of life in terms of weather, as opposed to the dangerous impact of additional CO2.
Well, I changed the verb you used. This isn't a question of belief. Obviously, we have to take a lot on trust in life, but this is an area, and it's one I've worked in now for half my professional career, where I've gone through a process of gradual and sometimes shocked disillusionment, as I've discovered that scientists who've made strong assertions on the basis of their reputations turn out not to have been trustworthy. And we've seen this in the contamination of the temperature record, for example, which is what lies behind part of the question that you just mentioned. I mean, let's just take this hot period we're in at the moment. The rule of thumb is that the more extreme weather events, please note weather, not climate events, that we experience, the lower the likelihood of human agency. So what are the three things that we notice for the period of global warming that we have had since 2022, because it's been considerable? Do you know them?
No, I don't, but you're going to tell us.
I am. The first, and in many ways the most significant, was in January, 22nd of January 2022, off the island of Tonga, an underwater volcano blew. It's called Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai. Mm-hmm. It had a volcanic eruption index of 6 out of 10. It was the most powerful volcano to explode on the planet since Krakatoa in 1883. And being underwater, it projected a column of water in the space of 2 or 3 days into the atmosphere. So powerful was it that water was injected through the stratosphere. Partly it went into the troposphere, where instantly it freezes and then circulates the globe. Water vapor in the atmosphere is the strongest global warming agent that there is.
Right.
And in the space of 4 days, HTHH increased the water content of the atmosphere by 10%. 1. 2. In 2022, there was, and the Australians are well familiar with this, an El Nino. It wasn't as strong as the one we are experiencing this year, but it was pretty strong. 3, the sun was moving in these regular cycles, 7, 11-year cycles, towards the climax of solar cycle 25, which happened, by the way, just at the beginning of this year. So it was on the increase in its intensivity. So you put those three things together, and by simple economy of thought, you have got adequate explanation of major interventions into the global climate system, which is, remember, a deeply mysterious, complex adaptive system. It's self-organizing, it's buffering, self-buffering, otherwise life on Earth wouldn't work.
And separate from CO2.
Well, CO2, shall we deal with CO2?
Let's deal with CO2. Is CO2 the dark creature that the catastrophists say it is?
Without carbon dioxide, we'd all be dead. Carbon dioxide is the food of life. It's the gas which feeds plants, and the plants feed the animals, and the animals feed us and plants too. Now, the situation, we can be very precise about this, and by the way, for the same reason that we know about HTHH, we know now the correct scientific position to take on the negative role of carbon dioxide. It's because we now have substantial long runs of satellite data. Satellite data is pure, particularly pure. Now, let's just get a couple of things out of the way. First, the theoretical possibility of carbon dioxide warming the atmosphere is, of course, real. We've known this since Arrhenius published his famous paper in 1896 on the effect of carbonic acid in warming the temperature.
The question is by how much?
And whether you can actually determine it. Now, it's a much weaker global warming agent in the atmosphere than water vapor, which we just discussed with HTHH. Because that together produced this, I think, clearly this last 5 years where and we'll see where it goes, but after the end of this El Nino, it may well calm down again. But CO2 can have this effect. But the question is, do we know? Now, this sounds like a simple question, but it has a complicated answer, so bear with me for just a moment. A great deal of what the catastrophic narrative depends upon is an appeal to two things. One, the supremacy of science, which is turned into a god, so we put it into inverted commas, like Victor Borger with phonetic...
yes.
I can't remember which one he does for double inverted commas, so I won't do it on your program. But we have that. So we have the reification of science on the one hand, and then on the other hand we have 50,000 Frenchmen can't be wrong, which is the appeal to expertise, which says you do not have a degree in X, Y, or Z, and here are 50,000 people who do, and they all say that you're wrong, so ergo you must be wrong. Well, this is the same as Galileo in front of the Holy Inquisition. They all said he was wrong, and they were threatening to twist his balls, and he still maintained, and still it moves.
So you're an advocate against believing that just because 50,000 scientists tell us that we're being hurt so much by CO2, you're an advocate against that theory?
Yes, well, it's not theory. The assertion cannot be demonstrated because, and very, very specifically, there are several pure data streams. I've mentioned one which comes from satellites for temperature. But for carbon dioxide, as I expect you know, there is a particularly reliable and pure data source, which is the Mauna Loa laboratory in the middle of the Pacific. And what does that tell us? It tells us that since 1970, something extraordinary has happened with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It has increased by about a third. My goodness, that sounds like an awful lot. Well, it's gone from 380 to whatever we are today. I think it's about 460. Carbon dioxide does not correlate. The increase of carbon dioxide does not correlate with the temperature record. There is no correlative demonstration on evidence from those two. So 460-70 is quite comfortable. But remember that from the core records, we know that when coal and oil were being laid down in the prehistoric forests before gravity got to pressing it, the concentration was about 30,000 parts per million. So we've got a long way to go.
We've got a long way to go. As a matter of fact, I remember speaking with one of the co-authors of the early IPCC report, Professor John Christie, who said to me, "Thank goodness, Chris, we are warming slightly and not going in the other direction."
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. A cold world, cold kills far more people than hot. But there is another side to this CO2 coin before we move on.
Yeah.
And that is that what can we say with scientific precision about the effect of carbon dioxide? Well, the answer, and this is satellite data, is that surprising increase of 1/3 does correlate with something. It correlates with the greening of the planet. And in the last 25, 30 years, the planet has greened by about 15%. So, what we can say, as we sit here in a hot London, is the increase in carbon dioxide in the last 30 years has been a net benefit to mankind. If you dwell on that statement for just half a second, it means that Mayor Khan and his ultra-low emissions standards and the entire bureaucratic apparatus which says that the tax that I pay on my car is correlated to the amount of CO2 that comes out of the tailpipe. This is, as Jonathan Swift would have said, not just nonsense, it's nonsense on stilts.